Together we can ensure that wild chimpanzees have a better life. Together we can save their homes. Hello, my name is Luis Cabral, and the reason I have chose this type of topic is because of how I seen this documentary a long time ago during during the time I took a class as anthropology, and how she became well known as she was the first to research this type of topic. Now, for the research with the research that I have gathered, I will explain to you about how Jane Goodall began being an anthropologist and also how she's studying the wild chimpanzees. The first thing I will go through is through her childhood and why she became an anthropologist, while also a primatologist. The second is where I can explain where she began studying the wild chimpanzees. And, and finally, the third thing is how it caused a big impact around the world. Let's begin with my first point, which is that Jane Goodall was born around the year of 1934, and during her years in high school and colleges, she became a primatologist, which is the focus of studying primates, while also doing anthropology, which is the study of humans and human behaviors, including in society as well, in the past and present. The main reason that she wanted to gain the understanding from the animals in the natural environment, especially the wild chimpanzees, is that she would examine mostly than other animals that she encounters. And it is said that she was the first person to ever examine the wild chimpanzees. And another reason is because she became world famous scientist is because of how she was ever the first person to want to study the behaviors of the animals and their environments, including the wild chimpanzees, that she studied and no scientist ever studied them, and so she became the one and only scientist to ever examine the chimpanzees behavior in Tanzania, which is somewhere in coast of Africa. And also the environment that they live, where she finds them in a large population. This with this in mind, we are going to examine the behaviors of the wild chimpanzees and the events that had occurred during the time of the documentary. Moving on, my second main point is that in the documentary that I watched a long time ago in my class was called Among the Wild Chimpanzees. There, it was so interesting to me, and it was around 1960 where Jane Goodall was the first and ever to study the chimpanzees and their behaviors, and then she was famous for examining the behaviors of the chimpanzees. There, the people showed her where they are and their behaviors and they also help her with a lot of food and research to help her with. As she tries to get closer to them, the chimps will feel threatened, but over time they will feel comfortable and trust her to let her get close to them and let her study about how the chimps are smart enough to use rocks and sticks as tools. They use the branches and leaves to create beds to lay on, and also how males show intimidation and fight each other to see how strong they are. Now, in the video, she quotes that about 18 months, when a small group allowed me to approach and be near them, which states that it took her a long time for the chimps, where they were scared at first, but over time they gained her trust and acceptance so she can get closer to them and examine them. So as she examines them on a horrible event in the video, where the chimps went into cannibalism and eating each other, and also how a disease epidemic caused a lot of populations, including the babies. But over time, the population grew back, and at that point, she became famous to examine the chimps, and now we establish her history with now we establish her history, we'll be continuing on how she impacted the world. Finally, the third and final point is that the way that she impacted the world as is that how she is the first person to study the behaviors of the chimps, while also the first female scientist to study them over the course of 45 years, and also that they are smart to be able to survive in the wild by creating tools and beds. For a long time, no one ever got near them to get closer to the chimps, and so far she was the only person to get closer to them, and they don't trust her at first, but now they gain her trust. She claims that they are people like us, even if they don't use technology what we used to be, like we are right now, creating tools, but they use rocks and sticks to create tools to survive. And scientists are reconsidering the definition of being human, and so causing an impact around the world. And she began a national park somewhere in Africa called the Institute in Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania, where she is working as a director. Overall, Jane Goodall is a famous scientist to ever get closer to them and study them, and also how she changed history about being defined human and also being a human being. In conclusion, we have talked about how in her childhood she wants to study animals, especially chimps. We also how she's the first to ever examine them in the Isles of Africa, and also how this discovery caused a huge impact around the world and defining the word of being human. The quote that I found interesting was Jane Goodall herself, where it states that she is very dedicated to save the chimpanzees and also their homes, and starts a national park. So I want you to think, if you were in her shoes, and I mean in her shoes, what would you do and what things you want to discover around the world? Thank you.